Hi everyone, and welcome to my first booktube video. I have been wanting to do this for years, so I am very excited to finally get started. I am making the transition from booktube viewer to booktube creator. I have always wanted to have my own channel for the same reason I'm sure all booktubers have a channel, which is that I want to connect with people all around the world about something that I love very much, which is reading and literature. So I thought a lot about what would be a good first video for my booktube channel, and I thought, why not do my favorite books of all time? If this channel is going to document my reading experience, why not start out with what has been the best of my reading experience thus far? I also think that looking at my list of favorite books will be a good introduction into what kind of reader I am. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna look at my favorite books of all time. I have put them kind of in chronological order because I think that ranking your favorite books is so hard because you obviously have love for all of them. And you know, another thing is some of the books are my favorite books of all time, not just because of the book, but because of when I read them or what they meant to my reading experience. So yeah, I'll talk more about that as I look at each one, but they're in mostly chronological order, except I've separated out my favorite book of all time. I will save that one for the very end. I feel like when you're a reader, people ask all the time, as soon as they find out that you read, they're like, what's your favorite book of all time? So you have to have an answer, even though I think that that's so hard to pick even a list of favorites and then to pick one out of that list. It's kind of ridiculous, but you need to have an answer, and the last book that I'll talk about is what I consider to be my favorite book of all time when people ask. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, the first book would be The Giver by Lois Lowry. So, like I said, some of the books on this list are on this list because they are just the best of my reading experience. They're the best books I've ever read, but some of them are on this list because of what they mean to me. This book is on this list because it's the first book I ever loved. And I think that the first book you ever love as a reader always has a special place in your heart. So I read this in elementary school, and I was absolutely obsessed. I can't even tell you how many times I reread it. I would just finish it and then go to the front and start over again. I was just mind blown by this book when I was an elementary school student. And I was so obsessed, that fun little story, that I took the book and I wrote a play version of the book, and then I held auditions and I casted myself as the lead, and then I put this play on for my school. That's how obsessed I was with this book. I was super annoying. So I love this book because it's the first book I ever loved. I feel like it's really popular, but if you don't know what this book is about, it's about this world that's a utopia, and you know, everyone has the perfect little family and the perfect house, and everyone gets assigned their role in the community once they reach a certain age. And so the main character in this book, when he reaches a certain age, where they're going to start assigning jobs, he gets told that he is going to be the giver, which is the person who holds all of the memories from all of the bad things that have happened in the past. So everyone who lives in this community, they have no knowledge of war or famine or anything bad in the world's history. And so the giver is the one who holds all of those memories. And so the main character is chosen as the new giver, and he has to go to lessons with the current giver and take all these memories, the memories of the world, and hold them for the rest of the community to kind of protect them. And like I said, I was mind blown as a young kid reading this book, watching it unfold finding out as you read it what the community is unaware of, what things are a part of our world that are not a part of this world. You kind of learn that along with the main character as he comes to find out about what life used to be, which is, our real world. So yeah, love this book. I have a lot of love for it because it was the first book I ever loved. Next, I have The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. Again, very popular, but it's one of my favorite books of all time. I have somewhat of an interesting relationship with this in that I did not read this in school like a lot of people do. I saw the trailer for the remake of The Great Gatsby with Leonardo DiCaprio before it came out, and I was like obsessed. I was like, oh my God, it looks so good. I want to see that movie. And I was like, I've never even read The Great Gatsby. I'd obviously heard of it because, like I said, it's very popular. And so I was like, I'm going to read it before I see the movie. I like to do that sometimes when I'm really interested in a movie and I know there's a book version. I will read the book first because I don't want to ruin the book for myself by having already seen the movie. And so I read it then in preparation for the movie and absolutely loved it. And I have a lot of love for the novel and the movie. Honestly, I love them both. I just think this is such a interesting story with interesting characters, and I feel like it does a lot in not very many pages. So yes, I love The Great Gatsby. I love the theme of pining after someone forever. The next book, I guess I would describe also like The Giver, is not necessarily the book itself, but what it means to me as part of my reading experience, although I do love the book, and that is Revolutionary Road by Richard Yates. So the reason that I say this is important to my reading experience is that I was a very big reader as a kid. I love to read. I love going to the library. I love getting books. I was just a very bookish kid. And I kind of fell out of that for a while. I read a little bit here and there in high school, some of that being for class, some of that being for pleasure. But really didn't read it all in middle school, and like I said, just read a couple books here and there for high school. So like that love for reading and constantly having a book on the go, I had fallen out of that for a while. And again, this actually has like a movie tie-in. So I saw the movie Revolutionary Road, which if you have not seen that movie, I recommend it. It's one of my favorite movies of all time. It's again, Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet reunited again after the Titanic. But I saw the movie, adored it, and found out it was based on a novel, and I picked up the book and I read it, and I feel like this book is what got me back into reading. I picked up this book, adored it, and never stopped reading from there. I just got back into always having a book, and I credit that to this because it was the book that kind of restarted my reading. But this book is, I didn't say what The Great Gatsby is about, but everyone knows, right? So I don't feel like I need to describe The Great Gatsby. But this book is about a couple, and they live in the suburbs in, I believe, the 50s. 1960s, well, 50s or 60s, and now it's gonna bother me. So it was published in 1961, but I think it is set in the 50s. But it's a couple in the 50s, and they live like a very normal, traditional, suburban American life. They have the nice little house in the suburbs, 2 kids. She's a stay-at-home mom. He has an office job, and they kind of had bigger dreams for themselves than that. And so, of course, they end up feeling dissatisfied with their life, and they decide that they are going to pack up their lives and move to Paris. And everyone around them kind of meets this news with confusion. They think they're crazy, that they're going to give up this beautiful, life that they built for themselves to just take their kids to Paris and hopefully find jobs. And the people around them do not take well to this, but it's very exciting. It kind of reignites their marriage, but then something happens where maybe that isn't going to happen. And I don't want to say too much, but this novel is incredible. I think it deals really well with that struggle that at least I've dealt with, and I'm sure many people have, of being exceptional versus being mediocre, and the lengths you're willing to go to maybe just seem better than other people, what makes a happy life. It deals with a lot, and I love this book. I love the themes in here, and it kickstarted all of my reading ever since I read it, which I read this in college when I was like a sophomore in college. So that would have been around 2014, and I just have been reading nonstop since then. So the next book would be The Hours by Michael Cunningham. I love this book. I actually have it signed. So if you can see, it says June 12th, 2016, to Logan, peace, Michael Cunningham. So I actually met him. I did a postgraduate writing program at Yale University, and they brought Michael Cunningham in as a speaker. And he, of course, after his speech, which was incredible, his talk, he had all of his books for sale, and I had never heard of him, never read him, and people were all like, oh, he wrote The Hours, he wrote The Hours, he wrote The Hours, and I was like, wow, everyone's read this book. And it was the winner of the Pulitzer Prize, and so I was like, I have to get this. So I bought it, and that's when he signed it. And on my way home from this program, I took this out of my bag and I read it on the airplane, and I read the entire thing. I was completely entranced. The writing is unbelievable. The way the story is crafted is unbelievable. I am to this day in awe of this book. It is gorgeous. It is 3 stories interwoven. One of the stories follows Virginia Woolf as she attempts to write and as she takes her life. So it's the very end of her life. That's one of the stories. Another story follows a housewife in the 50s or 60s. Maybe I have a thing about reading about housewives in that era. But another one follows a housewife who kind of wants to not be a housewife. She would rather just read if she could. She just wants to be in a novel rather than having all the responsibilities of taking care of a home and her son. And the book she's reading is a Virginia Woolf novel. And then we have a modern day story, which it was modern at the time, but it's in the 90s because this was published, I believe, in the 90s. Let me check. 1998. So there's a modern day story as well, where a woman is planning a party for her best friend, and that story kind of mirrors Mrs. Dalloway by Virginia Woolf, which is the book that the housewife is reading. And so those stories just kind of they intertwine throughout this novel, and they come together in one of the most gorgeous conclusions to a book I have ever read. And just sentence by sentence, the writing is beautiful. I love this novel. I feel so lucky to have a signed version from Michael Cunningham, and yeah, one of my favorite books of all time. Then we have A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. This book has such a special place in my heart. I am very moved by literature, but rarely to the point that I was with this book. I mean, would have to close it and sob holding it close to my chest. That's how much this book moved me. I think it is a masterpiece. Like The Hours, I think the writing line by line is breathtaking. The story is unbelievable. You span a very long time. So it's about a group of friends, and it focuses on one friend, in specifically Jude, and you follow them from like their early 20s for decades. And I find it difficult to even talk about this book because I just think there's so much here. I have so much love for it. But basically the one friend in this group, Jude, that the story is focused on, he has a very mysterious past, and he is a very damaged person. And so the novel is kind of watching how his friends deal with his damage, and then also uncovering what happened to him and why he is that way. And yeah, the story is heartbreaking. The writing is beautiful. I'm obsessed with this book. I know it's kind of a controversial thing because a lot of people on BookTube had a lot of negative things to say about this book, which I could not believe. I couldn't believe it. Because like I said, I thought it was a masterpiece. I've heard criticisms, people saying that it was unbelievable, and they couldn't stay with the story because it was unbelievable. And I do not get that criticism. Like there is the famous saying, stranger than fiction. Like the things that happen in the real world are so unbelievable. Like you couldn't make stuff up, some of these news stories you hear and things that people have gone through. And so the fact that this is unbelievable to people, I don't know. I don't get that. I just think it is incredible. A Little Life by Hanya Yanagihara. Then we're on the penultimate book here. So then we have To Kill a Mockingbird. So again, a super famous book that I never read in school. So I came to this book on my own, and this was a somewhat unique reading experience for me because it's pretty rare for me to not be able to put a book down, and that's how I felt with this. All I would think about when I was at work was wanting to get home, to get back to it. I was so in it with the characters and the story, and I felt like I was there, and the heat in the South, and yeah, I just felt completely engrossed in this book while I was reading it. And I think it has a lot of beautiful things to say about race and about being a good person and being courageous as a way of being a good person. And I just think that the perspective that you get by having a child narrator adds so much to the story. Obviously it's one of the most famous books of all time, and that's because I think it's a masterpiece, and it has a very special place in my heart. Oh, that's 2 Pulitzer Prize winners on the list, but I love To Kill a Mockingbird so much, and I don't know if it's necessary to explain what this book is about, just like I didn't know if it was necessary for The Great Gatsby, but essentially it takes place in the South during the Civil Rights Movement, the Deep South, and a black man in the town is accused of raping a white woman, and the narrator, who is a child girl named Scout, her father decides, he's a lawyer, he decides that he is going to defend this black man, and it follows the consequences of that for the family of standing up for this black man in a place that is not very interested in hearing any defense for a black man. And there's a little bit of like a mystery to it as well, with their gifts being left in a tree, and you know, her and her brother and her friends, you know, don't know who's leaving these gifts, and you know, there's a mysterious neighbor. There's just like, there's everything in this book, I think. Beautiful writing, again. To Kill a Mockingbird by Harper Lee. Hi, this is future me. As soon as I finished filming the video, I realized that I had forgotten something very important, which is another favorite book of mine. This is why I forgot to include it, is because it's not just one book, it's a series, and I'm sure you can guess what it is: Harry Potter. Like I said, when I think of my favorite books, it sometimes slips my mind because it's an entire series, but these are certainly my favorite. It's my favorite series, and you know, it deserves to be talked about in my favorite books of all time. So yeah, I'm holding up the Half-Blood Prince because it happens to be my favorite book out of this series, so I thought I'd hold this one up to represent it. Yeah, love Harry Potter. I don't think there's any reason to tell anyone what it is about, and definitely not a unique opinion, but I adore Harry Potter. I think my next video is going to be the Harry Potter tag. I one day hope to make my Harry Potter collection, because I have quite a bit of Harry Potter stuff. I have a very interesting relationship with Harry Potter as well, because I feel like a lot of people read this in elementary school when Harry Potter was coming out, and they would do the midnight releases and read them as they were released, and you know, it has a nostalgia factor for them because they read them as children. That's not the case for me. I actually started Harry Potter when I was 21 years old. Yeah, I don't know how it missed me as a kid. Like I said, I was a very big reader as a kid. I read all the other like famous books of that time. I don't know how I never read a Harry Potter. It completely passed me by somehow. I never read it. And I started it when I was 21 because I had many friends who adored Harry Potter, who had read the entire series. I had seen some of the movies and was really interested in it. And so I picked up the first one, and there was a summer of my life where I read the entire Harry Potter series. I picked up the first one and didn't stop until I was done with the entire series. I was completely obsessed. I was hooked, and I'm still obsessed. So yeah, Harry Potter deserves to be in this video as well. And finally, what I would say is my favorite book of all time, and I'm like saying right now that I am going to try to not ramble on and on, because I could talk about this book for hours. So I'm telling myself right now to keep it short and sweet. Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. This is my favorite book of all time. I think it is the most beautiful piece of literature I've ever read. I think everything about it, the writing, the story between the pages, what the author was trying to do with the story as a whole. I just think it is a masterpiece. I think it's a masterpiece. And like I said, one thing that's really important to me as a reader is writing. Like line by line is the writing beautiful, and this is the most beautiful writing I've ever read. And it's not even the author's first language, which is another thing to add to this book of why it blows my mind. Yeah, I think that with this book, he was trying to take the most repulsive thing he could think of, which, if you don't know what this book is about, it is about a grown man falling in love with a 12-year-old girl and taking her. He took the most repulsive thing he could think of and tried to make it beautiful through writing, to see if he could convince readers that something that is disgusting could be made beautiful based on words, based on how it's described. And yeah, I just think it's the most interesting book I've ever read, because that is the dilemma you have. You will find yourself reading this book and thinking, oh, that's so beautiful. And then you're like, wait, I have to remember what I'm reading about. It messes with your head. It's gorgeous writing. It's a masterpiece. See, I told myself not to ramble. My favorite book of all time, Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. So those are my favorite books of all time. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I'm super excited to finally be making BookTube content. This is another I forgot to say this clip. So I think that one of the reasons that I wanted to make the transition from a BookTube viewer to a BookTube content creator is that, at least among the booktubers that I watch, and I watch a lot of them and I love them, but I watch their videos and I'm like confused by the amount they read. Like I am admittedly a slow reader, but I'm confused. Like they'll do a wrap up for the month of May and they'll be like, here are the 12 books I read in May. And I'm like, what? I'm like, I read half a book this month. Like, I feel like, I don't know. I feel like there isn't anyone on BookTube, at least no one that I've seen, that reads at a slower pace. And I love BookTube. I love watching it. But I feel like that is the one thing that like stresses me out a little bit about watching BookTube, is I just feel so inadequate watching all these people who like seem to read like a book a day. I just don't get it. And so I thought, why not be the person who can represent all the people out there who love to read and love books, but we're slow readers and we're not reading 10 books a month. And so yeah, it means that I might struggle a little bit more than other people making content, but why not be the person that represents the slow readers? You know, I still aspire to it. I still aspire to read like multiple books a month, but I don't know how they do it. I don't know how they do it. So yeah, that's something unique that I hope to bring to BookTube. And if you love any of these books, or if you even disagree with me on any of these books, you could respectfully tell me down below. But yeah, if you love any of these books, tell me down below. If you would like to suggest me books that you think I would love based on this favorite list, please feel free to do that. I would love to hear from you guys, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye.